these demons obviously must have left me during this attack.
Most of us are familiar with the notions of exorcism and possession from the movies, but exorcism is a reality. My investigations were to bring me into contact with a man said to be possessed by a wolf spirit, a woman who spoke in tongues, and someone who, while being ministered to by a priest, appeared to bleed spontaneously. Were these people really being invaded by demons? Or are there rational explanations for the extraordinary behaviours that drive some to seek exorcism? On the 22nd of July 1987, just a few minutes before midnight, 44-year-old Bill Ramsey entered this police station in the busy seaside town of Southend. He wanted the police on duty to lock him up. He'd committed no crime, but Ramsey was terrified that something horrifying was about to possess him. Then suddenly, while he was talking to policemen in the car park, he went berserk and attacked the officers. Ramsey flew at them, growling like a crazed animal, lashing out with his hands, which he'd formed into claws. From that moment, he was known as the Southend Werewolf. Am I right in understanding he's actually not a huge bloke?
No, probably about 5'6" or 5'7". He certainly put up a good fight with the officers, one of which was quite badly injured.
The most seriously injured officer was Duty Sergeant Terry Fisher. While other officers fought to hold him, Fisher took the full force of Ramsey's frenzied attack. But this attack was like nothing the police had seen before. Bill seemed to have superhuman strength. According to eyewitnesses, Ramsey grabbed the sergeant by the throat, then lifted the 6-foot, 14-stone policeman with just one hand.
The sergeant was knocked to the floor, and the guy put both his hands around his neck and attempted to throttle him.
The way people talk about it now is about in terms of kind of superhuman strength. Was that your experience of it?
It was certainly unnatural strength.
It took 6 officers to restrain Bill and force him into the cell. So is this the cell?
That's the one.
Wow. Once inside the cell, Ramsey continued to growl and rave. It seemed like someone or something had taken control of his body.
What happened, he put his right arm and his head through this hole here.
His entire head and arm?
Yeah. While he's got his head and his arm out there, he's making a growling noise. He's curling his lips up like that, and he's salivating down his lips. And he's formed his hand in the shape of a claw, and anybody that went near him, he was trying to grab them with his hand.
Bill's amazing strength aside, I couldn't fathom the matter of the slot in the door. Even someone with a narrow head would be unable to force his way in any further than the temples, let alone all the way through. I know because I tried. What Bill had done seemed nothing short of impossible. Until now, I'd only heard witness accounts of what happened that night, but to get the whole story, I really needed to hear Ramsey's version of events. I knew he was still living in the area, and eventually I tracked him down. For the last 17 years, Bill has been living a quiet life with his wife and 3 children. Ramsey didn't remember anything about what happened at the police station. Everything he knows about that night, from the moment he went berserk, he's had to put together from the reports of eyewitnesses.
No time doing any of these bizarre attacks that I ever remember here.
Do you remember arriving at the station?
Just about. It almost as if it was something trying to drag me there for safety's sake, almost. I think, anyway. I think I was trying to get there.
Ramsey's attack on the sergeant was so severe, so brutal, that the officer left the force as a result, following 20 years of service.
I had my hands around his throat, nearly choked him, throttled him to death with his mates, and they got me off, apparently, so.
Gosh.
But he, like I say, he will not face me anymore.
So you were able to lift up a man who was bigger than you
massive.
with one hand?
Yeah. Just hold him in the middle of his chest and just pick him over my head and throw him. Quite often, throw him quite some distance, it has to be said.
I mean, I heard the police saying that.
This is police witness, not me saying.
I was going to say, I heard them saying it and I wasn't sure if it was
This
true.
is police witnesses and ambulance and fire people, so they are people pretty
Extremely
reliable witnesses to tell you that. And they say, not me. A lot of people say, oh, you're saying it. I said, I'm only telling you what they've told me.
Officers had watched in amazement as Ramsey had forced his head through the small opening, but there was still another surprise in store for them.
We had to call the fire brigade because we couldn't get him out. The fire brigade at that time said that they wouldn't, under those circumstances, deal with him in that condition, and that's when we called in the police surgeon to have a look at him. The doctor gave him a sedative, which he assured us would probably take effect within 10 or 15 minutes. It actually didn't take effect, and as a result of that, he had to administer another dose to actually knock him out, and eventually he calmed down to such an extent that the fire brigade were able to use their soft soap and squeeze him out of the hole.
You wouldn't think someone could get their head knocked. Had that ever happened before?
No, I've never seen it before and never seen it since.
That is extraordinary.
To see a human being doing things like that, I found to be quite sorry for the guy in a way, because that's he's showing himself to be something quite unnatural.
Am I right in thinking there were other officers who believed they were saying something supernatural?
Oh yes, without a doubt. It's not very often that you can say that somebody suggests that they are a werewolf and they're in your police station.
After the break, never in my wildest dreams could I have imagined how extreme Bill's case was to become.
It was possession. He would actually come under possession, and he needed to be exorcised.
The case of Bill Ramsey, aka the Southend Werewolf, had so far thrown up a lot of questions, but few answers. What was the reason for his strange animal behaviour? What was the source of his superhuman strength? And why was his body able to absorb large doses of tranquilizers with no effect? It was time to share my findings with parapsychologist Kieran O'Keefe. Was this a true case of demonic possession? Or could he offer another explanation for Bill's behaviour?
My take on it is that we're seeing the classic symptoms of a temporal lobe epilepsy. At various points, Bill talks about a tightening of the chest, around the heart, and just a general sort of muscular pain. In addition, he talks about a strange smell, like he starts to experience a strange smell. And these are all what are called prodromes of epilepsy. They're warnings of an oncoming epileptic fit. Witness reports have said that he becomes very aggressive, there's gnarling of the teeth, there's a definite change in behaviour and mood. And these are again symptoms of temporal lobe epilepsy, even the gnarling of the teeth, which may explain the nickname of werewolf.
It sounded like Kieran might have hit on the answer, but when I checked with Bill, he insisted he hadn't suffered an epileptic attack. Doctors had carried out a series of tests, and all obvious medical explanations had apparently been ruled out.
So what did they rule out with you?
Well, they ruled out all the, as I say, schizophrenia, epilepsy. They knew it wasn't any of that. So they said, well, what the hell is it? And I said, I don't know, you tell me. And they really didn't know.
So they drew a blank?
Yeah. So I thought, well, what do we do now? I'm in no man's land. And you're terrified of where you're going to wake up next morning. You wake up in the police or in hospital again, what? I don't know. Something, I didn't know what was happening.
And was there an element of you were frightened what you might be capable of?
Oh, indeed. That was the major concern. Was I going to kill somebody one day?
You know, it's strange. When I first heard the story of Bill Ramsey, I found the idea of Bill Ramsey really frightening. And now after having met him and seen what a, normal, charming, ordinary fellow he is, the thing I find most frightening is the idea of being Bill Ramsey. To me, the idea of suddenly waking up after living a normal life, waking up one day, and that day suddenly being afflicted with something just completely unpredictable, where you don't know what you're capable of, you don't know what you've done, and think maybe most frightening of all, the idea that the medical profession and the psychiatric profession both draw a blank and cannot say what's wrong with you and therefore cannot help you. I mean, to me, that is one of the scariest things I can imagine.
The next piece of the puzzle was hidden in the small community of Monroe, Connecticut, at the home of internationally renowned demonologist Lorraine Warren. She'd heard about Bill's case and was so convinced that she understood his problem and could solve it that she tracked him down while he was thousands of miles across the ocean in Southend.
When you finally got to meet Bill, what were your impressions of him?
I knew then, through psychically discerning, that Bill did come under demonic attack. Demonic possession can occur to people through many, many means. It can, and it does. Cases where people open doors to that occult world, Ouija boards, witchcraft, tarot cards, all of these things are means of opening doors to the occult world, and anything can come in. A demonic spirit can oppress us, it can oppress our thinking. Then a spirit can actually take over.
So you're saying it's almost like a force actually controlling your body for to its own ends.
Mm-hmm. We don't have superhuman strength. So that comes from these spirits. That's one definite indication, is exhibiting superhuman strength.
After analysing all the evidence about Ramsey's terrifying condition, Lorraine Warren had no doubt in her mind what the problem was.
What do you think was going on?
It was possession. He would actually come under possession, and he needed to be exorcised.
What kind of demon are we talking about?
In Bill's case, it would be a wolf spirit. His ears pointed to a certain extent, the muscles in the back of his neck all enlarged, and his hands clawed in a manner that no human hand could claw, and he struck out.
A British national newspaper got hold of Bill's story and offered to pay for him to travel to America, where Lorraine Warren would arrange an exorcism for him. But Bill was shocked when he heard about the plan.
And they said, well, you're possessed with devils. What? I thought, well, I ain't got anything else, and perhaps they could be right, I don't know. So they said, would you be prepared to go to America to be exorcised? I said, sorry? They said, exorcise. Well, my wife and I looked at each other and I nearly burst out laughing. And we spoke for a little while, and I said, well, you think you can help? If you genuinely think that's what I didn't at this stage. I must confess I had no faith in whatsoever. I said, if you think so, I thought, okay, I've never been out of the country in my life. I thought, this isn't going to work. At least I get a free trip to America, I suppose.
Right.
And basically, I'm honest now, I was honest to them then. I said, that's all it means to me. I just get a free trip out of the country and have a look at America.
You're not religious in any way, and
No.
what was your feeling about the whole idea of exorcism?
I thought it was just a crazy stunt, quite honestly.
On the 28th of July 1989, Bill was exorcised at Our Lady of the Rosary Chapel in Monroe, Connecticut. Beside exorcist Bishop McKenna, a traditional Catholic priest, stood two burly guards armed with stun guns in case Bill became violent.
The day finally did come and I was shaking like a leaf. I thought, oh God, what have I let myself in for here? But anyway, I got in there and Bishop McKenna came with all his skulls and his holy water, whatever they used to do it. And he started all in Latin, chanting all these different chants that they have to do. So I sat there like a bit of a daisy, really, thinking, oh, come and get on with it. But then, strangely enough, I felt something stirring inside. I thought, God, no. My hands were shaking, like, Christ, something's going to happen here. And I started going into one. I felt my hand sort of trying to grip into the claws.
Were you afraid that you might attack the bishop?
Well, that's right. He was such a frail little man, I'd have killed him. But say that's why they had these two big guards with the guns all ready, just in case. And he he says, bringing out the devils that were causing it. And, well, anyway, I came back round again, and these demons obviously must have left me during this attack, until I fell back and I was pouring a sweat and feverish I was. And from that day to this, it obviously did the job, or whatever was in there must have come out and never bothered me since.
Do you now believe then that there's such a thing as demonic possession?
Yeah, I've got to believe that happened, yeah. I've sincerely got to believe that was the absolute answer to it.
It was like the end of a long journey.
Was it frightening for you to be there as a witness?
I've been involved in many exorcisms. They're all frightening, they're all frightening. They really are. You kind of pose a threat to that demonic world. So you must always do it with faith and conviction.
Whatever your own beliefs about demonic possession, you can't help but be really pleased for Bill that the attacks stopped after his exorcism. The question remains, could this just have been a coincidence? A psychological cure to a psychological problem? Or did exorcism really drive out a demon that had been plaguing Bill Ramsey for years?
The belief in demonic possession and exorcism goes right back to biblical times,